a lot of choices that Microsoft made turned out to be the wrong ones. And, I'm not sure they all had terrible intentions the entire time. I know that people probably don't want to believe that. I actually think Microsoft and probably Phil Spencer at a point really had some good intentions. They wanted to do something good for fans. They probably, some of those people that worked there definitely wanted Microsoft and Xbox to be competitive. I'm sure the last thing that some of the people wanted was these games on other platforms and things like that. So when you look at how things are kind of going right now, it's kind of easy to forget that things were a little bit different then, and what we're seeing now is basically kind of a shell of what Xbox used to be, unfortunately. And that's sad to me. People really want to know how I feel about it, and so I'm honest about it. I'm hurt, I'm sad. I know it's just video games, but it's something that I've kind of grown up with. Like there's been lots of different ups and downs in my life, and Xbox has been kind of a constant there for me. And I just it's just unbelievable the way that it's kind of screwed up now. And it's like they've never had worse leadership, they've never had like worse ideas, and this is something that I'm kind of dealing with. People can, like, I think anyway, maybe feel kind of the pain that I'm dealing with or whatever. I've invested so much time and money, and I have so many good times in my mind from Xbox, and Microsoft has kind of screwed themselves over a bit and screwed the fans over. And that's something that I'm not sure I'll ever get over myself. It's just like yes, I can play other things, and I do, because I have a PlayStation and Switch and and retro games, and I love playing that stuff. But at the same point in time, like I'm kind of looking at what Microsoft is doing, and it hurts. And then you look at like the reason why a lot of this is happening, right? And a big reason why a lot of this stuff is happening is because of the Activision buyout, right? And like there's just no other way to kind of put it. Microsoft really kind of just screwed the pooch, so to speak, and we're kind of seeing the end result of that, and it's really unfortunate, and it sucks. And trust me, I get it. I understand where everybody's coming from with this stuff. I want to get into this though, because it just goes to show that Microsoft is really in a piss poor place. And is there ever going to be a way to kind of come back from it? They made a lot of bad choices, and that's, I think, something that we're going to have to account for in the future. We're going to have to wait and see if that's something that they're going to be able to kind of fix. It's going to be tough. It's definitely going to be tough, and we'll have to see if that's if anything can be done about this. We'll have to hopefully wait and see. But I want to get into this. It should be a very interesting video. I'm very curious to hear what everybody thinks. The things that they're doing, the things that the choices that they're making aren't paying off. Let's look at this, and this one in particular. But the one I think that's not paying off the most is Game Pass, right? Like a lot of people were in a lockdown. Game Pass was growing. They predicted it to be at 110 million in the next 4 years. It's not even going to be close to that, as probably untold millions just canceled their subscription. But you can tell that they were panic moves that they were making, right? Putting first-party stuff in there day one. You look at the adjustments that they did to Game Pass with the $30 price. I think they didn't think they'd get as much flack as they're getting, but I also think that they probably thought most people would just jump down to the second tier, and that would maybe lead to more people buying their games, or waiting. Because if you look at that's more the EA Play type deal, right? Where EA will put their games in there a year after they come out, but people still buy the games because you really want them or whatever. They probably thought either people are going to pay this exorbitant price of $30 a month, or they'll drop down and wait a year or possibly buy the game, right? So you could tell they really kind of regret adding the day one Game Pass stuff. And now it's like the big thing that they did with buying Activision, buying Call of Duty. The Black Ops 7 beta is live. even in early access, there's cheaters everywhere. That's not a good look for Microsoft, you know. It's unfortunate when this happens, but yeah, that's a pretty terrible look. You know, I have to kind of be honest about it. You know, it shows that any game, anything is potentially anything that has an up can have a down, and so potentially this could be a very bad thing. The multiplayer for beta for Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is now live in the early access period for users who have pre-ordered the game, and Game Pass subscribers. It'll be live for anyone who wants to check out the beta. Not included in those categories on October 5th, but even before it opens to the general public, reports have surfaced across social media that cheaters are running amok through the game. Spotted by Eurogamer after a bunch of talk from Treyarch and Activision about its new and improved anti-cheat systems, which even goaded cheaters on by saying cheaters will try to test the limits during the beta. That's exactly what we want. Team Ricochet is here, watching, learning, and removing them as they appear. Cheaters have taken up the challenge that Activision has put on them. In fairness, the clips that are here, which I'm going to link this, an account that Treyarch has already found and banned, so the team is trying to get rid of the cheaters, but it doesn't say very much about the preventative measures, like adding the same secure boot protections that Battlefield 6 has in Black Ops 7. Is it enough for Treyarch to ban these accounts after they've already gotten in-game and ruined a match or two? On one level, yes, as long as the cheaters are being caught, but you could argue that the anti-cheat protection is working well. But then, that said, the players who have had their matches ruined by cheaters who are only caught after the fact might not feel that way. So as long as there are people playing multiplayer games, there will be those who will cheat, and it's a constant battle for developers to minimize the impact of cheaters as much as possible. But it's worth asking what these kernel level measures are, because again, we keep seeing a lot of people kind of cheat. And you know, again, mostly it's the PC side, but it's interesting because you can't realistically you know, stop the Xbox or the PC side from it, but it's like I don't think there's very many options for turning off crossplay at this point. You know, a lot of these companies, I think Microsoft in particular, where there's not a lot of people who own an Xbox in the first place, so they have it so you can't really disable it, or you can't find matches quick and things like that, so you're kind of forced into it. So that's the real negative side to this. Hopefully something will come from it, but it just goes to show that, you know, a lot of Microsoft's moves have been, you know, pretty poor, and that's just another one in a long line of poor moves, in my opinion, that Microsoft is kind of laying out there. It's not a good look. You know, they're expecting, you know, Game Pass to be this huge deal. They're expecting Call of Duty to do well, because let's just be real, they need it to do well. You know, that's why they took Call of Duty off of the Game Pass tier in the middle, and it's only in the high one at, you know, the $30 a month one, the $360 a year one. So, you know, we have that situation where this is happening, and, you know, people are kind of fed up. I think in general, people are a little bit fed up with, like, the things that Xbox are doing, because, you know, at the end of the day, that's stuff that's not really helping the fans. It's not doing anything for the fans. You know, it's like we thought we'd be getting these Activision games in Game Pass when they bought it. They put very few Activision games into Game Pass, so it's really an unrealistic. Like we all thought, like myself, like I admit, you know, I thought, hey man, this is going to be good. You know, Activision games are coming to Game Pass. It's awesome, blah blah blah. And then, you know, when it comes down to it, we start to see this situation where it's not really been that way. You know, we haven't gotten anything from it in the years since it's happened. You know, I think a lot of us expected all the Call of Duties to be in there and kind of breathe a second life into, you know, these games, and it hasn't happened. You know, all the Activision library, we thought maybe some of this stuff would come back, and it hasn't really happened either. So, you know, it's a real shame what's going on right now, and I'm sure that the people at Xbox and Microsoft in particular are kind of have a chagrin right now because, you know, like Call of Duty is not infallible. There's been times when it hasn't sold well. If it does, it's got real competition with Battlefield coming out and things like that. You know, that could put Xbox itself into worse shape. You know, like they're counting on Call of Duty to sell well to help prop up the rest of Xbox, and if that's not the case, then what happens? You know, I think that's going to be a real issue kind of going forward. And, I think that, we're all going to kind of have to wait and see what happens. Anyway, I'll link this so you guys can check it out. Have you played the beta? Have you noticed any cheaters? Let me know. Thank you guys oh so much for watching. Rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.